And beginning our show, according to last month's USDA Farm Sector Income Forecast, net farm income for this year is projected to rise 10% from 2018. Of course, with the flooding impacting fields in Nebraska and surrounding states, ongoing trade negotiations, and more, those projections can easily change. All that to say, if you can find a way to save a buck here and there, you'd be wise to do so. Nebraska Extension educator Robert Tigner joined me to talk about some of his favorite ways to stretch your cash flow on the farm. One thing you talk about, cancel or renegotiate leases that are unprofitable. How does one decide which decision is best on that front?
Well, some of that has to do with communication with their current landowners. The tenant needs to understand their landowner well and have a good communication avenue with that landowner. If there's a farmer that has just recently retired and is renting that land to a new tenant, they probably have a good understanding that there's a lot of risk in today's agricultural environment. But if there's 2 or 3 generations removed from that operation of that land, it's more difficult for those tenants to communicate well with the landowners. They have to have real good communication with their landowner, though, to figure out which one is the better process. If they haven't canceled that cash rental agreement or that rental agreement by the 1st of September, they are locked in unless the landowner is going to allow them to renegotiate.
And you also mentioned defer capital asset purchases. What are some things to consider there?
Well, some of those things to consider is which is going to be more cash conserving for them. Sometimes it is more cash conserving to actually buy a new machine or a used machine or have it rented from an operation or have custom operations done for them than to own their current machinery line. Sometimes it's more useful to get rid of those repair costs and be able to use newer equipment, newer machinery. But you have to know what each cost is for both of those operations. If you don't know what those are, you must figure that out.
Okay, so another thing you mentioned, utilize FSA guaranteed loans. So how do you get those loans and where would someone learn more about that?
Well, that's the Farm Service Agency. So the first place to go is to set up an appointment and visit with the loan officers at your nearest FSA office. Sometimes those might be a ways away, but you'll always be able to contact them. Those guaranteed loans allow the lender, your current lender, financial lender, to lend you funds at less risk. That's what the guarantee is all about. It's similar to an FHA loan, Farmers Home Administration loan for homeowners loans, and things like that.
And they have the low interest marketing loans too, right?
Yeah, one thing to really consider, and hasn't been done by a lot of farmers recently, is whether or not to put their owned or their stored grain under loan. A CCC or a conservation loan that would give them still access to gaining appreciation in that grain price, as well as cash to pay off operating notes or to pay off costs for inputs that they will have for this year.
And you also mentioned sometimes it's best to sell assets that aren't earning their keep. Could you speak on that a little bit?
Yes, when I was farming, it's those extra tractors that you have sitting around that you really never use, but you kind of like to have them around just in case. You know, maybe they're a collector item or whatever, something like that. Or maybe it's that spare combine, or you have machinery left over from switching from conventional till to strip till. That extra machinery needs to be sold someplace so that it no longer becomes an asset sink for you.
And are there any other tips that we didn't specifically talk about but that you'd still like to mention?
Well, one thing that really needs to be considered by farm families is to develop a family living budget. That budget is extremely important to stick to because it's easy for us to spend money on things that maybe are not in the budget. If we stick to the budget, we will have better control of our cash flow. The same can be said for the farm operation itself. Develop a projected cash flow and stick to that budget and track how well you are doing with sticking to that cash flow document that you've prepared. It helps you plan rather than react to situations.